A little bit of a description and backstory to help paint the picture. At the time of this, I was roughly 26 years old. I'm 30 now. My husband and I at the time lived in a military city. He was enlisted, and this particular city was popular, not just for the base it housed, but also for its incredible crime rate. Honestly, if people had warned us ahead of time, we would have happily moved out of the city and dealt with the long drive, but I digress. At the time, we lived in a duplex in a really bad neighborhood. The way the unit was set up was if you stood in the street or our parking lot style driveway and looked at the house, our unit was to the left and our neighbor's was to the right and exposed to the street since our building was on the corner. The entire property was surrounded by a chain-link fence, save a 6-foot privacy fence that ran along the back of the property to block our view of the parking lot that led to the apartments behind us. I promise this will be relevant. As I said, we lived in a horrible neighborhood where crackheads and hookers ran free, but I didn't ever feel overly unsafe. At the time, I had a 200-pound English Mastiff, a sweetheart but intimidating from a distance, and my size always gave me a hint of security. I'm 5'9" and definitely not a beanpole. We also had a few sweet neighbors, which helped buffer the horrible. One such neighbor was a man that walked the neighborhood regularly. He walked everywhere, and our house was about center in his path, to the store and the like, so we'd see him at least once a day or so. Dwayne was a nice enough man. My height, roughly my build, and always smiling. But not that creeper kind of smile. A normal, happy smile. He never set off alarm bells, which makes this more disturbing. We'd been living in our house for about a year or so, and all the while gotten to know some of our neighbors better. Up until this point, Dwayne would always wave hello and offer small talk. He'd speak to my husband more than me because I just don't do well in the southern heat, and he tended to be long-winded, so I'd wave, say hello, and then go inside after a few short minutes. Everything was fine until my husband was deployed. We'd been married at that point for 6 years, and this was his 5th deployment during that time, so I was used to being left alone. It didn't bother me in the least, especially since it would be a 9-week deployment. Seriously, we were so pissed about that. What a pointless time frame, and I'd already learned the layout of the new city fairly well. One day, I was coming home from the grocery store about 2 weeks after my husband had left. I'm a firm believer in one trip with the bag, so I loaded up my arms completely and headed for the house. As I said before, our yard was completely encased in a fence, so just after I managed to shut the gate, I heard somebody calling up at me. Turning, I saw Dwayne bearing his normal, happy wide smile and heading for me. I shift the bags and give him my attention. I was raised to be polite to people, and since I knew him vaguely, I had no problem saying hello. Besides, seeing my arms full of groceries, some of which were milk, eggs, and other cold things, he surely wouldn't keep me too long. But I was wrong. He starts droning on about nothing in particular, during which I could only smile and nod. I waited patiently for a break in the conversation so I could head inside, but he barely took a second to breathe, let alone let me speak. For a little while, the conversation had been pretty mundane, until he started talking about his lady friend. Without warning, he started to tell me explicit details about his relationship with whoever this woman was. He went on to tell me how much she likes, what he can do to her, his techniques, and, to my horror, how good he is at going down on her. I knew I must have looked as horrified as I felt because he just started chuckling and went on as though nothing was wrong. He even went so far to ask if my husband was as good. At this point, not only were the grocery bags digging into my hands and arms, but I was thoroughly creeped the heck out. I told him I had to put my groceries away and let out the dogs. I thought that would be the end of the conversation, but evidently not, nor was it any less unsettling. "Oh yeah? Your man's gone now, huh?" It took my brain a second to realize what he'd said. I never told him my husband was gone. I didn't tell anyone who wasn't a close friend, so naturally, my guard rose. "Yeah," he went on, "you need someone here to take care of you." "I'm fine," was all I could really think to say. For some reason, I didn't even bother saying he was wrong. I guess on some level, I thought my husband must have told him. "Well, how about I come by later and make you dinner tonight? I'm one hell of a cook." I knew my brows came together and my eyes were wide because I could feel it. "How about 6? I can come back around 6, make you some dinner, and then we can watch some TV. Shouldn't be alone." He just kept persisting, which made every hair on my body stand on end. I told him no thanks. I didn't tell him to screw off, which I have no idea why not, and turned around. Without bothering to look back, I went inside, locked my doors, and waited until I was sure he was gone before letting out my dogs. By the time 6 came, I didn't even want to be in the house in case he did stop by. After making sure everything was locked up tight, I left and drove around for an hour or so before coming home. I didn't even bother turning on more than the TV when I got back, just in case he came by again. I didn't see him for a couple of days, maybe a week and a half. I was a smoker back then and hated smoking in the house, so I'd let the dogs out, smoke a cigarette, then bring them back inside. After Dwayne's disturbing confrontation, I took to smoking in the backyard on my back steps. From where I sat, I could only see a few feet of the main street, being as our unit was away from the street, beside neighbors who had trees and bushes and the privacy fence between us and the apartments. I felt relatively shielded. I knew that if I saw Dwayne, I'd be more than capable of ducking around the corner of the house and hiding. Like I said, there was just a small strip of the road that left me exposed. It was really easy to stay hidden. One day, I'm standing outside in the front yard, talking to the sweet little old lady that lived across the street. We were just having a nice little talk until Dwayne suddenly came walking up. I, of course, felt uneasy but a little safer with my neighbor there since I didn't think he'd be as gross as he was before. He wasn't, but it was no less creepy. My neighbor had asked me if I quit smoking because she didn't see me out front anymore. That was usually what she'd used to come and say hi to me since she was always gardening. I didn't immediately answer because Dwayne was right there, but it didn't matter. He spoke up first and told my neighbor, "Nah, she smokes in the backyard now." My blood ran cold. Not once, not one single time had I seen him walk by while I was back there. I never saw him walk by while I was back there, nor did I catch a glimpse of him when I stepped out of my front door and walked around back. Never. I politely excused myself and went inside, creeped out as hell. The only way I could think he might have known I was in the backyard was if he somehow had been watching me through the bushes and trees in my neighbor's yard to the other side, or through the privacy fence that led to the apartments. Each thought was as disturbing as the last. I couldn't stand the thought of him peering at me from the shadows. That was the last time I smoked outside. I didn't go outside unless I had errands to run until my husband came home a few weeks later. I had told him everything and he admitted that he was creepy as heck and just told me to keep our Mastiff close, who was very protective of me. And I did. The last time I saw Dwayne was just a glimpse. I had let my dogs outside, and a few minutes after sitting back on the couch, I heard my Mastiff losing his mind. Anyone who owns dogs knows the difference between a normal bark and an angry "I'm gonna rip your leg off" bark. This was the latter, and it terrified me. Until this point, he'd only ever growled protectively twice and never barked. Freaked out, I opened up the front door and saw Dwayne standing halfway up my driveway. It looked like he'd been walking up to my fence, probably to say hi, when my dog caught sight of him. The bark was so ferocious that it had him and me completely still. My dog continued to bark and even charged the fence, which he could have easily taken down if he chose. Every hair on the back of his neck and down his spine was standing on end, and it was pretty obvious he wanted a piece of Dwayne. Dwayne glanced at me, forced a smile and a wave, and backed slowly out of the driveway. My dog didn't calm down until he was out of sight, at which time I was able to get him in the house. I was so grateful that I gave him half a package of sliced turkey lunch meat. I don't know what/if Dwayne had anything planned, but my dog, who never had a problem with him up until that point, definitely knew something wasn't right. Like I said, we'd been in that house for just over a year, and many times Dwayne had stopped by near the fence to talk, and our dog never reacted like that. It still freaks me out to think about why my dog suddenly changed his mind. I haven't seen him since, so... Dwayne, we may not know each other, but for your sake, stay away, or my dog may have something to say about it. A few days ago, I'm walking downtown in the mid-afternoon when I become aware of a presence walking behind me. It's a busy city and a crowded street, so I don't think much of it. But this man stays right behind me for a few blocks. I can hear his breathing behind me, becoming ragged and coarse. He's breathing heavier and heavier as he follows me. I don't want to turn around or make eye contact, but I can sense him following me still. Then I hear him say, "Honey, if you don't slow down, I'll never catch up to you." I get terrified. I feel my blood run cold and I whip around to confront him. He's big, at least a foot taller than me, and I can see on his chest one of those little sticky paper ID tags. It's from a mental hospital. A mental patient has been following me for blocks, and now is trying to get me to slow down. I turn away and immediately cross the street, not looking back, but he appeared to stop following me at that point. I'm still just terrified by the incident. And that's how I'm sure this post would have been written if I were the woman, but I'm not. I'm the guy, and this is the story about how I accidentally became someone else's scary story. I have been out of the office for over a week due to a nasty bout of bronchitis that utterly wiped me out. And my girlfriend, my poor loving partner who nursed me back to health, had now herself become stuck at home. It was my first day back to work. And feeling bad for her, I decided to try and do something nice for her. She's an avid player of Elder Scrolls Online, you see, which just released a new expansion. And that expansion allowed for a new class. And she had been putting off getting the expansion in order to focus on picking up the slack for my illness. So I decide I'm going to go get it for her. I decide on my lunch break to hit the nearby GameStop and get her the digital code. So on my lunch, I head out. Now here's the thing. The local GameStop and my office are on opposite sides of a very large hill. Remember also, I've been sick all week with bronchitis. Now I get to the GameStop okay, buy the digital code and text her a picture of it, along with a message very jokingly, telling her she needs to wait till I get home to play because I'll never catch up otherwise. Then I start heading back to the office, and I start walking back up the hill. And this is where the heat and the humidity and the fact I'm walking uphill after, once again, having bronchitis starts to take its toll. And I begin, I'm quite sure, very audibly breathing heavily. I also just so happen to be walking the exact path of a woman who has ended up directly in front of me, and I've now been walking behind her for a couple of blocks. Now, two important things about me. First, I'm a tech nerd, so I have the smartwatch, the Bluetooth earbud, whole 9 yards. Second, I am a big dude. In the 6'2", 240 pounds college athlete who still works out a lot and can probably mess you up in a sort of way. I might be a scary looking guy to some, but I'm a damn teddy bear who posts pictures of his cat on Reddit and wouldn't hurt a soul, but I'm fully aware that in the wrong context, say if you are a 5-foot woman and you think I'm following you, I can be terrifying. So what's the tech nerd relevance here? Smartwatch, Bluetooth. Girlfriend calls me and I tap my watch to pick up the call without taking the phone out of my pocket, which syncs to my Bluetooth earbuds. My girlfriend hears the audible chime on her end and, knowing I've picked up, launches into how she couldn't wait and is already playing without me. And that's when I, quite jokingly, as I'm glad she's feeling up to it, tell her, "Honey, if you don't slow down, I'll never catch up." And the woman ahead of me freaks out and whips around. I immediately realize, shit, she thinks I'm talking to her because I'm not holding a phone and I've been following her for the last 2 blocks and audibly wheezing. And then I realized something else. Remember how I said it was my first day back to work? I still wasn't 100% and I had left my work ID at home. And I work in a very secure government building. The kind of building that doesn't just let you into it. Even if all the security guards know your face because you've been there for 10 years now. No ID, you still gotta go get a cavity search level screen in and wait for HR to verify that, yes, you still work there and no, you are not disgruntled ex-employee looking to steal confidential files or some shit. But once you've had your morning colonoscopy, they do give you one of those odd little visitor badges so you can come and go in the building throughout the day without having to have your pride and personal boundaries violated every time. And this little sticky badge that I still had stuck to my chest bears the name of the government agency for which I work. What agency is that? The Department of Mental Health. Because I, despite looking like someone who may have at one point in his life had a nickname like Moose, which has on occasion, I think, led some to initially get the impression I might be a tad slow on the uptake, am actually the Regional Legal Director and Deputy Chief Counsel for the State Office of Health and Human Services. Her eyes move to the badge. She stays motionless for a moment, then turns and quickly hustles down a side street. It was at that moment I say to my girlfriend, I think some lady just thought I was trying to kidnap her. So here's to you, downtown lady, who I'm pretty sure thought I was some heavy-breathing pervert mental patient, instead of a government bureaucrat who was just trying to do something nice for his girlfriend on his lunch break while vastly overestimating his own physical well-being. Wow, do I have a crazy story for you guys. Sorry if it's a little long. This experience has caused me a lot of anxiety and it actually feels therapeutic typing this out. During my freshman year of college in New Hampshire, a girl in my dorm hall accidentally caused a small dorm fire by leaving popcorn in too long at like 3 a.m. We all had to evacuate and the fire trucks came, and the RAs made a pretty big stink about it. The girl who lit the fire was the subject of many yik-yak jokes, and I felt bad for her because she really wasn't attractive and she looked pathetically lonely. And plus, causing microwave fires seemed like a pretty innocent mistake for such harsh comments. A couple days after the incident, I saw her in the resident hall and made casual small talk by asking her how things were popping, and kind of just checking up on her because I felt bad. She laughed, and that was kind of it. A conversation of about 2 minutes. Fast forward to a week later, and I hear a knock on my dorm door, and the same girl, who I am now going to refer to as Popcorn, comes literally running into my room with no hesitation. I didn't even tell her my room number, and at the time I just figured she just saw me go in there once, because she didn't even know my name at this point. It takes me a second to realize that she's in full-blown tears. There is now a stranger on my bed in tears, and I'm just like, So I counsel her like the bleeding heart I am and ask her what's wrong. She tells me that the dining hall cook sexually assaulted her and the college wouldn't fire him and she was suffering emotionally because of it. Being a victim of assault myself, I really sympathize with her situation and gave her my phone number in case she needed help walking to the dining hall with a safety net and whatnot. I don't take sexual assault lightly. The night after our conversation in my room, I got a call from her to walk her down to the dining hall because the cook that assaulted her was working that day. I walked her down to get food and she just lit up like a glow stick and a whole new person emerged. It didn't matter that her assailant was in the room. She was talking my ear off about Pretty Little Liars, One Direction, etc. A lot of things I just didn't really care about, but then again, she had nobody to talk to and the situation was complicated. I just listened and nodded my head. Over the course of about 2 weeks, give or take, I had walked her down to the dining hall about 4 or 5 times. She may have been a victim of assault, but she was also a very annoying and unappealing person. She even talked about herself in third person. Her story about the assault became inconsistent, and there was always new major developments about what happened, and the story was changed to something much more drastic and severe. Then she made a comment one day along the lines of how she wished that somebody would drop a bomb on of all the same people in the same ethnic group as the man who supposedly assaulted her. And in her words, so they would finally learn to stop doing that. It made me immediately uncomfortable and unsettled. I didn't want to walk her down or interact with her anymore. The week of Thanksgiving came around and I went back home to visit my family while Popcorn stayed on campus. During that week, I had 60 missed phone calls from Popcorn. One day, I even had 20 in the span of a couple of hours. No normal person does that. Red flags definitely were raised if they hadn't been already. When I got back to campus, of course, there was a knock on my door, and sure enough, it was her crying again. She tells me that because I wasn't on campus to protect her, she was assaulted by a Muslim guy while walking to Panera Bread, and the Filipino RA groped and slapped her boobs. If red flags were being raised, then this was a full-on siren. I'm no sexual assault apologist by any means, but the assault-to-ratio rate was exponentially high, especially since these 3 assaults happened within a month's time frame. All by people of color, seemingly at random. She was making these stories up to elicit some sick form of empathy, and as an actual victim of assault, I was beyond offended. I told her I had to leave for class, and I ran the heck off to my friend to ask for advice. It got crazy really fast. I warned the RA officers about her, and they told me they would talk to her. During class, I was up to 100 plus missed phone calls and a series of individual messages that just said hi. I was done with this shit. I wanted nothing to do with her. I blocked her number and went back to my dorm. That week after classes, I just went straight to my dorm. I did not want to see her. One day, I had to go to the bathroom, so I walked to the stall to do my business. I'm just casually in there, peeing with my pants around my ankles when Popcorn literally crawls on the bathroom floor and dips her head underneath the stall door and says, "Ha, I knew you would eventually come out." I am freaked the F out and near tears. I tell her I'm wicked busy and I don't have time for her and that I was upset for having her invade my privacy. It took a lot of courage to do that because I struggled deeply with confrontation. She tells me that she's depressed and it's because her mom died when she was young. I think some manipulative shit that I was just not in the mood for. I leave her in the bathroom and go to my room and lock the door. I watched some YouTube and took a nap when I was rudely awakened by not knocking but pounding on my door. I did not answer. The pounding just continued and got louder. "Open this door or I'm going to kill you. Open the door or I will kill you. Now." And she just waited outside of my room, repeating the same thing over and over. singing songs into the door cracks for an hour. I was so scared I just cried and called my dad to pick me up from school. I didn't have many friends that lived on campus since it was a small college and a lot of people commuted, and this whole situation just made me feel so isolated. My mental health was deteriorating rapidly. The RAs had been informed of the threats made at my door by other students observing what happened, and she was given a warning, but that was all. One night, I had my boyfriend, who lived 3 hours away at the time, come to spend the night at the college. We had been watching a movie and were now napping on my bed when all we hear is the door open. Like an idiot, I had completely spaced out and forgot to lock the door. Popcorn comes running in and jumps on top of us and says in a baby-like voice, "Popcorn wants cuddles." I was beyond creeped out and was basically screaming, "WTF?" My boyfriend, being the no-nonsense, confrontational person he is, told her to get the absolute heck out of my room. She told him that she would. My boyfriend smiled and said good, then pushed her out of the room and slammed the door, giving 0 Fs. I swear, he almost slammed her finger shut. I love him. We reported her to the campus police in the morning, and still nothing major came of it. That was until there was another popcorn fire in her dorm not too far after, and she got kicked out. I wish that's where the story ended with her, but unfortunately no. After she left the dorms, my resident life became a lot easier. I made a lot of new normal friends, and I was feeling a lot less anxious. One day, a girl in one of my classes invited me to go to the mall with her to get our nails done. Now, this salon had clear glass, so you could see the rest of the outside mall where you are getting your nails done. I'm all relaxed when all of a sudden, I see Popcorn's face pressed up against the glass of this nail salon, and she is with a morbidly obese neckbeard. I'm getting my nails done, and she has literally been staring at me through the window for a good 10 minutes with this man. To say that I was unnerved was an understatement. I told my friend what was going on, and we booked it out of there, and they tried hard to follow. In retrospect, that is when I should have called the police. After the mall, I had a bunch of random friend requests from profiles with a small Yorkie dog as a profile pic and several message requests. I opened them, and they were from Popcorn asking me to be her bridesmaid at a Pizza Hut wedding that she and her fiancé were having in 2 years. You can't make this shit up. There was another message about how she was so upset that I didn't acknowledge her at the mall, and she had been waiting so long to introduce me to her doting fiancé, and she was so upset with me that she wanted to wring my neck. Of course, I blocked all those profiles and things were pretty silent. I've been living with my boyfriend and going to school in Rhode Island for 2 years currently. I'm loving school and I have an excellent group of friends. About 5 months ago, I got home from work and I had 3 missed calls from a random New Hampshire number. Thinking it was one of my family members, I called back. And nope, it was Popcorn on the other end. I immediately hung up. There was also a voicemail left that was just a person breathing into the phone and telling me that I was expected at the wedding. I cried and called the police urgently about the number. I don't know what happened or if anything did come of it, but I haven't been bothered since then. I like to think of myself as a very kind person, and people often take advantage of my openness. It really is a fatal flaw that I'm working really hard on. It's unfortunate that there are so many unhinged and lonely people, but we really shouldn't make it our burden to help them sometimes. Sometimes being nice can actually cause a lot of mental strain. When I was in 3rd grade, there was this girl in my class. She wasn't particularly liked by anyone as she was quite the bully and overall a rude person, even to adults. She was known to have anger issues and get mad at people for what seemed like no reason. I was no exception. Her name was Carly. She had been mean to me in the past, but that didn't deter me from going to her house one day, after she had been nice to me all day at school. Naive, I know. So before leaving school that day, I called my mom to ask if I was allowed to go to Carly's house. She said yes, and to call her when I got there so I can give her the address. Now, when I think back, I wonder if she had a bad feeling about the situation, since she doesn't normally ask for the address, and she isn't picking me up since Carly's house was about 2 blocks away. When I got there, after calling my mom of course, Carly insisted on making me look pretty, aka wetting my hair and brushing it. I let her. Then she told me to close my eyes and that she was going to take me to the living room. I closed my eyes and she began to guide me towards the bathtub. We were already in the bathroom, so the tub was a solid 2 feet away from where we were standing. I opened my eyes just enough to see where she was guiding me. My foot hit the side of the tub and I said that this didn't feel like the living room. She said it was and that I just need to step over the gate. I tell her that I know this is the bathtub. She stops trying to get me in the tub and brings me to the kitchen instead. She says that she's going to make cereal. I was standing behind her when she reached into her dishwasher and said she was grabbing a spoon. The way that she clarified that she was grabbing a spoon immediately told me what she was really going to grab. And it was for sure not a spoon. I can still remember the feeling of dread that overcame me when she said those words. She pulls out a large knife and backs me into a corner, holding the knife only inches away from my neck. I can't remember if any words were exchanged during this. Maybe I was just too shocked to say anything. I only stayed there for maybe 30 seconds before I pushed her aside and ran towards the door. I grabbed my backpack and put on my winter boots. By the time I had my boots on, Carly was trying to block the sliding door. I pushed past her again and flung open the door. I ran down her patio steps and out her front gate, not bothering to close it. I just wanted to get home where I was safe. I remember her yelling at me as her dogs escaped through the open gate. But I didn't care. One of her neighbors, who was in their front lawn, waved and smiled at me, clearly oblivious to what had just gone down. I ran down the road into my house, not stopping once. It wasn't until I hit the door of my house that I broke down. I began to cry and yell for my mom, my two older sisters yelling at me to shut up. My mom walked over to me and immediately knew something was wrong. I explained what happened and she was very understanding and freaked out. I can't remember if it was the same day or the next day that I had to talk to a police officer about what happened. He asked me what kind of knife it was and whatnot. I think my mom relayed most of the story to him because I don't remember having to say much. They got in contact with Carly's foster mom and Carly got in big shit for it. At school, she yelled at me for getting the cops involved and tried to guilt me by saying that her mom threatened to put her back in foster care if she did anything like that again. I told her I didn't care. The school was also notified of this situation and the teachers made sure to keep an extra eye on her. That didn't mean I wasn't paranoid around her. I made sure to keep my guard up for the rest of the school year. I always thought that it was a bit extreme to involve the cops, but I ended up making Carly never mess with me again. I ended up moving after that year for unrelated reasons, only to move back here before I started 6th grade. First day of middle school, I wasn't waiting for them to call my name, so I know which class is my homeroom when I hear an all too familiar name, Carly, and her last name. I watch as nobody goes up to join the class. Was she not here? Next, I was called. I go up to join the class that she would have been in. I found out later when the teacher was doing attendance that she had moved 3 hours away just before the beginning of the school year. It's been 3 years since then, and I can only hope she doesn't come back. But if she does, I'm not too concerned. And if she does, I will make sure that she stays away from me. That incident has given me some trust issues, but at least now I know to choose my friends wisely. You hear stories about people unknowingly squatting in other people's homes, but never think it would actually happen to you. Well, it happened to me. About 10 years ago, I, 31 female, was living alone in a 2-family house on the 2nd floor with my then toddler. For the story to make sense, I need to try and explain the layout and the backstory. My brother's close friend at the time lived on the 1st floor and is the one who referred me to the landlord. We had private front entrances, but a shared back entrance with a staircase that ran from the basement all the way to the 2nd floor. I would frequently leave my back door unlocked because I had a habit of locking my keys in the house, and my downstairs neighbor could let me in the back door. The downstairs neighbor had a friend who was kind of down and out. He had a history of substance abuse, but was supposedly clean at the time. He was a relatively nice guy though, and my neighbor had been letting him stay on his couch for a while. The neighbor had a 4-year-old daughter, and having someone constantly sleeping on the couch without any plans of finding a permanent living situation was becoming disruptive to their everyday lives. The neighbors tell him that he needs to go. It was summertime, so the friend decides he's going to sleep on the couch on our covered porch. We tell him that's not acceptable, and then we ask him to leave. We meant the property in general. It had also become abundantly clear that he was using again, and his behavior had become somewhat erratic. He was also making a lot of unsolicited advances on me, which had become increasingly uncomfortable. He wasn't happy, but it wasn't our problem. He stopped coming around finally, and we no longer saw him around town. Fast forward a month or two, and I noticed things going missing. Jewelry, small amounts of money left around the house, lighters, inconsequential items I had written off as lost. This house was old with paper-thin walls. The back door in question was right next to the bathroom, along one side of the shower. It also made a very distinct noise when opened. One day, my car was at the mechanic, so it probably appeared that I wasn't home. I'm showering and I swear I hear the back door open. I freeze, practically stop breathing, but after a few minutes, when nobody murdered me American Psycho style, I wrote it off again. I'm a notorious wimp and have had a history since childhood of thinking every strange noise was a potential murderer. This was a long time ago, so I don't remember the exact length of time, possibly a few weeks. The basement was really big and shared, and the landlord also stored stuff down there. It was very packed with some very dark corners. We rarely went down there. The landlord comes by one day and goes down to the basement. He hears a strange noise, grabs a baseball bat, and finds this man in our basement. The man pushed the landlord down and ran out of the house and down the street. We call the police, who find him hiding in a trash can around the corner. Can't make this up. Upon further investigation, we find the basement window had been ever slightly propped open. In a back corner behind some boxes was a nest of blankets filled with our missing items, plus some drug paraphernalia. It reminded me of Creature's nest under the stairs at Grimald's place. If you know, you know. He had also left his flip phone behind in the chaos, where we found a lot of pictures of me sleeping. This man had been high on crack, living in our basement and regularly entering my apartment, both when I wasn't home and when I was sleeping, for months. While he seemed like a nice guy, he was regularly high on hard drugs, and that changes people. I still get chills knowing he could have done anything to me and my child, and I would have never seen it coming. The worst part is that the charges somehow got dropped, and they never even consulted us, and they never even gave us an option as the victims. This was not even close to his first criminal offense. My state is notoriously soft on non-violent criminals, regardless of whether it was a victimless crime or not. My local police department is also notorious for making deals in exchange for information on even small-time dealers. We didn't get any justice. Luckily, this man didn't have much lasting effect on my mental health. Just more of a WTF, I can't believe that really happened. Sometimes it feels like a fever dream when I talk about it.